very importantly, we're going to go to a victim of the grooming gang scandal, and she's a very brave woman called Ellie Reynolds, and she's from Barrow. Ellie, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Well, look, you know, I've read that the court story about one of your tormentors, one of your torturers, who during his court case, he quite rightly got jailed. It was revealed that you believe that you were raped 22 times, but you fear it could have been worse than that because they kept drugging you up and you're in such a drug state, you're not even quite sure how many times you were abused in that way. Would that be a fair representation of your, the essence of your story?
I would say the amount of times over a 5-year period were completely uncountable. I think what annoyed me more about that was that he was convicted for other people. However, there were still many others on the sideline that weren't believed, myself being one of them. Thankfully, he did get a lengthy sentence, and rightly so, but there is still a lot more people out there that really need to come forward about this man.
Well, his name was Shahar Jaman Mia, nickname of Sarge, one of 3 brothers jailed for a total of 54 years. For abusing girls from the age of 6 to 15 years old in Leeds and Barrow. You were in Barrow, and you were 13 when this ordeal began?
I was, yeah. So if you notice in the media outlets, they do say that it was historic, and obviously he was convicted for historic offences. This carried on long after the time frame that they're given. I don't believe that, you know, he woke up and thought one day he wasn't going to be a paedophile. He carried on.
Yeah, they do tend to, Ellie. Now, your harrowing story began, I believe, because you're from a loving family. You're famous for your love of horses. Nice pictures of you there. You were 13 years old, picked up off the streets and pushed into the footwell of a car by men who took you to dingy houses with grubby bed sheets, filthy windows, filthy mattresses on the floor, and they plied you with booze and drugs and abused you. That's what happened, yeah?
Yeah.
So they took you out of your happy family, schoolgirl, horse-loving life and ruined it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they did a very good job at completely naffing over the rest of my life with the complications of the mental health that I've received from the torture of them. Yeah.
Well, I can imagine. I can imagine. So as this was going on, and this is the story that you hear from so many of the poor victims of these rape gangs, you know, you just couldn't bring yourself. You couldn't bring yourself to tell your parents or your teachers or anybody. And partly because Sarge and his mates threatened to cut your tongue out, cut your fingers off, got you into a terrified state. So apart from the fact, I would imagine you just felt you couldn't tell your parents about this for obvious reasons, you were also terrified by their threats.
Yeah, there was a lot of threats, some which included that if I said anything to anybody, especially my family, they would come after not only me but my family as well. At the time I had a little sister 5 years younger, so I think I didn't say anything to protect other people, and initially protect myself as well from further violence that I was already receiving.
I mean, it's how awful for you. And how long did this go on for?
So it went on for 5 years.
For 5 years?
Absolute hell. So some days I'd be picked up in a car and I wouldn't come home for a day. Some days it'd be 4 days. It varied all the time. You never really had a solid ground on that you could go out, be safe, you know, typical teenage life where you could go out with your friends, you'd be in at 8 o'clock. I never had that because I didn't realise that they'd be round the corner or it'd be in broad daylight or I had to be somewhere for them, and it was just torture.
And what about your parents and your family? I mean, when you went away for a day or 3 days or whatever, I mean, they must have asked you questions, but you just didn't feel you could tell them.
I feel like my mum and my dad mainly, they used to try and, bombard me, concerned parents as they do, and, what the hell's going on and why aren't you talking? And I just had a complete switch up of personality. So whereas I was a really innocent, loved school, loved the horses kind of girl, I ended up getting into such an angry and upset and confused state that anybody that asked me any questions, I would be the first to lash out, snap. And I made it pretty clear that it was not to be spoken about. I didn't want any questions. I was dealing with coming home and having to process what had just gone on. So I'm gutted really now at my age that I look back and I think all they were trying to do was to make sure I was okay, and I was so reckless because of what I was being put through that I never gave a straight answer.
And, well, you were going through a kind of hell that no young kid should have to suffer or endure. Now, how did it finally come to an end?
So one of my abusers had a child, and I think one day something in me just clicked, and I thought, surely I am not the only person. And my mind started going elsewhere to protect other people. So initially, I knocked on my abuser's girlfriend at the time. I knocked on her house and said, you really need to know what's going on. I'm concerned for you. I'm concerned for your child. I gave her the layout of a house where I was trafficked. I ended up telling her what was where in a house. I think it frightened her a little bit, and she rang the police.
So she rang the police?
She did.
And then what, did the police come to see you?
Yeah, so I stayed at her house and I had officers come out and take a statement.
Yeah.
And then it was later no further action, and there's a bit of a blame passing at the minute between CPS and the police as to which one,
So hang on a second, Ellie. You got no further action?
Yeah.
After you told them, probably the story that you just told me, but probably in far more harrowing details, you got no further action. What did the coppers say? Surely the coppers must have said, well, this is serious.
I think it was a silence factor. I think when I'd gone to the police and I gave them all the information that I could, I gave them locations, vehicles, registrations of vehicles, time frames. I poured everything into them with a little bit of faith that they were going to help. I was later then, within 24 hours, arrested on something that I was acquitted for 3 years down the line. They kept a case running for 3 years and NFA'd me in the time that they had this case running, saying that because I was charged with something else, I wasn't a credible witness for the abuse that I suffered.
And how old were you at this time?
17.
17. So it had been going on since you were 13.
Yeah.
And it's now 17. And you basically, I guess it's not accurate to say you were ignored by the police, but you were basically rejected by the police. They took the case to the Crown Prosecution Service, and the entire case ended up with no further action. Did you inquire? Did you ask anyone why it was? I mean, you said about the fact you were charged with something. Can you tell me what the other offence was supposed to be you were acquitted of?
Yeah, so I reported my abuse to the police on the 3rd of March 2018. On the 4th of March 2018, I was accused of blackmail. So I was arrested within a 24-hour period. They kept that case.
Blackmail of who? Sorry to interrupt there. Blackmail of who?
A local man. I had absolutely no idea what they were on about. I was sat in interviews saying, please understand, please take my phone, please do this, please do that. They kept it running for 3 years, the case. They were appealing every time that the judge was saying something really isn't sitting right here. In the meantime, the judge ordered the Home Office to conduct a national referral mechanism, an NRM, which I came back double positive for. I really think that the police pulled anything out the bag to shut me up. silence me. I was constantly promised, we're going to get a charge. It's, we're going to do it. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I found it to just be delaying me and
yeah. So
pretty much gagging me.
Just to cut to the chase, you told the police your story, and they ended up arresting you and not the rapists.
Yeah, so they did interview my abusers, but I don't feel like the interview was done appropriately because they never took any notice. In 7 years since my case has been NFA'd and shut down, I've took multiple things back as new evidence, and I've still been shut down. Luckily, we keep everything recorded and it with emails, but they really are just doing anything to make it seem like it stayed historical and it wasn't a present problem, and it is a present problem.
You're still, so you're still going through this now?
No, I'm not going through it, but I know that grooming is still an issue.
I didn't mean grooming. I meant trying to get justice, trying to find out exactly why you were let down like this. Now, I gather that when your story emerged, was it at the time of the court case, that Jess Phillips, who is now the safeguarding minister for the Labour government, got in touch. You asked to meet her?
I did, yeah.
Well, tell me that story. What you just thought, because she'd done a lot of work about violence against women, so you got in touch with her. When was that, Ellie?
That was a few months ago. So I had actually heard on the grapevine that she was quite interested in meeting survivors, and she wanted to do anything that she could to help. So I did email and get in touch, and me and my dad were more than willing to sit down with her to advocate for survivors, to raise that awareness. She was all for it, and again, pretty much like the police, full of false hope. I'll do this, I'll do that. And we haven't even heard anything back months later about when she's actually interested in meeting. Just like a local MP that had sat there in a meeting that was recorded and said that the new victim and crime commissioner for the police has turned around to her and said, he's absolutely disgusted in how my case was handled. He can't seem to get his head around it. But nothing's coming above the surface. So
exactly, I mean, not exactly to the minute, but how many months ago did you get in touch with Jess Phillips?
God, I think my dad emailed her 3 months ago.
3 months ago. And did she email back, or one of her people email back? But she indicated that she was keen to meet you, yes?
Yeah, she did, yeah.
Was that a personal email, or was that from one of her staff? Do you know?
I think that was one of her staff.
Okay. And since then, nothing? Nothing. Who is your local MP?
Michelle Scroggum.
Labour?
Yes. And
tell me a bit more about your exchanges with her. Did she get in touch with you, or you and your dad got in touch with
me
her?
And my dad got in touch with her. I wanted to ask why she had shut down a local inquiry. She has declined that. While I was there, I was trying to give her my points on, this is what you need to do for the town. This is how you need to raise awareness. You're not doing enough. You're not doing this. I was giving her plenty of ideas. As I say, every meeting, every email, it's all recorded. So we've always got everything solidified. And she was too busy sat saying, oh, well, I can't, me and the crime commissioner have been speaking and we can't get our head around how your case has been handled. So disgusting. And I thought, you still to this day, I mean, that meeting was a month ago and there's been absolutely no updates. There's been no positive changes. There's been no outcomes of that meeting. It's been buried pretty much.
So just to recap, you got in touch with Jess Phillips, the Minister for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women, to tell her your story. People got back to you, very keen to meet you, and then you never heard anything again. Your local MP has been almost as dismissive, not much use to you at all. So this brings me to the real crux of this entire issue. How do you feel about the fact, well, back in January, you remember, we were promised potential, or the nation was calling for a national public inquiry into what actually is the worst sexual crime scandal in the history of this country. I mean, you are one of 250,000, an estimated 250,000 vulnerable young white girls, many of them underage like you were at the beginning of your ordeal. So the nation, if you recall in January, give us an inquiry, we need an inquiry here. Oh, no, we can't do this. Tell you what we'll do. We'll give you 5 local inquiries. Now, that was nowhere near enough, because this was and potentially is still going on all over the country. So 5 local inquiries. So we kind of go, all right then. And then 2 days ago, very quietly, they tried to sweep it under the carpet. They cancelled even those local inquiries. Tell me what you feel about that.
I think they're very good at sweeping things under the carpet. They've seemed to, made a dirty habit out of that. I completely agreed with the national inquiry. I think they need to take a look at a bigger picture of these men don't just operate in one area. They're likely to operate in many areas. It would have given us all a better chance, a better acknowledgement. I really think that they pretty much use survivors as bait to say, oh, look, we'll help you. And it's like dangling a carrot on a string, saying, oh, well, we're going to help. And then, well, nobody's listening. It's all quick, let's get rid of that. And it's mocking us, it's disrespecting us. And I feel like, how can you not take sexual abuse in children seriously? It really grinds me.
Yeah, it's a very good question. But you must be furious as well.
Absolutely.
Try to sum up, I mean, explain why again.
Well, I think that there's 250,000 on an estimate. There's potentially many more. There's potentially many more abusers. Why can't they sit in local towns? Why can't they all work together to minimise this problem rather than saying just they're not interested? That's really what gets me. It's they're not interested. My question is, would it be different if it was their family members, if it was their daughters, their sons? They'd be pushing the boat to get something done. They're not interested when it's just people like normal working class people.
I mean, one of yours, this guy Sarge, I mean, at least he got jailed and everything, but I mean, what we're talking about in terms of justice for you and all the other victims, it's not just about arresting people and putting some people in court. And let's not forget, many of these guys got away with it and continue to get away with it to this day. But the justice, a kind of justice for you, surely would have been a proper, full, national public inquiry. At least then you might feel your story was being properly heard, but you've had that taken away from you, and now they're not even going to give you any local inquiries. So you must feel deprived of justice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the real justice starts when they stop seeing us as an object as well, that they can pass the buck and sweep things under the carpet and like nobody's going to know or nobody's going to click on or notice. I feel like if they had a little bit of compassion and humanity in them, they should really get cracking with this. And it concerns me that it's almost like they don't want things to come up to the surface. It's almost like they're hiding something the more that they're pushing it down. It raises a lot of alarm bells. Why would you deny something like that? Why would you cancel things like that?
So I mean, the point is you got kind of treated like nothing, like a subhuman by this awful gang with Sarge and his mates. I mean, you must feel now you're being treated like nothing yet again.
Yeah, I feel like I've been treated like nothing since the minute that I reported it, and I feel like the longer that it goes on for, and there's a lot of things in the public eye, you're still treated like nothing. You're not like I say, it's just basically dangling a carrot saying, oh, look at what we're going to do, and then snatching it away from us like we didn't lose enough. We lost childhoods, we lost mental health, we lost progress in our life, we lost a lot of things. Why can't you just do this one that's going to benefit the whole country?
Well, I couldn't have put it better myself, Ellie. Just a last question. Thank you so much for this, by the way. It's been very brave of you. I appreciate it. And I think it's important that you tell your story because this is what's got, you know, your story is one story out of 250,000. Remember that. I'm sure you do. How's life been since you emerged from this darkness? I mean, are you able to have relationships or anything like that? You know, how is life?
I mean, I didn't even think that I was going to be here where I am today. There was many times that when I was going through my abuse that I thought, I'm not even making it out of this alive. I was, you know, thinking the worst, thinking that my parents were going to end up finding the daughter. It was really awful. I am completely living my best life now. I've done everything that I never thought I'd be able to do. I don't look the same as what I did when I was going through my abuse. You know, I did everything that they didn't want me to do. I couldn't have kids. They said I couldn't have kids. I've got kids.
Oh, great, great.
I couldn't have tattoos. I'm full of them. Like, but it still does affect my relationships. I won't lie. I do, you know, I suffer with complex PTSD, so I have got a great partner, and I don't know how he puts up with me half of the time, but it does give you still that instability in life. But it's something now that I have to just get up and think, do you know what? At least I'm living in a blessing right now, and I'm not where I was, and that's the way that I can move forward. I can be a voice for many other people that can't talk for whatever reason, and understandably, and as long as I'm breathing, I'll advocate for people like me.
Well, that's fantastic. And but I presume, you know, that's brilliant what you just said. I'm so glad that you found a kind of happiness now. But I mean, you'll always live with what happened to you. That doesn't leave you, does it? That must be in your mind all the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's triggers that come from day-to-day life that you wouldn't think came from day-to-day life, and you know, you do always think about it, because I always have the question of why. You can never understand why you would do that to me, or why would you do that to. At the time, I was a little girl, and I think you live with not only trauma from it and PTSD from it, but you also live with many questions that you're never going to get answered, and that alone is hard to deal with, because you carry a lot of shame, you carry a lot of, you know, I wasn't believed. It's hard, but I'm trying to think positive, and I also carry a voice for my generation, the younger generation, and hopefully if there's many people like yourselves, like myself, that can talk about it, it stays in the spotlight enough that somebody's going to have to do something.
Well, your voice is very important, Ellie. It's been very brave of you, and thanks again for coming on to the show. Let's keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
That's Ellie Reynolds, victim of a grooming gang. Let's not call them grooming gangs, folks. They're rape gangs. That's what they are.